Bros and heroes. Gonna tell you about bros and heroes. Gonna tell you about
comic books, costumes, facts, boots, and other stuff.
In this week's issue, World's Finest Wednesday.
Welcome into Bros, Foes, and Heroes. I'm Zach, joined as always by, it's just myself today. Mike and I are taking turns of having different issues to deal with. So I am doing our World's Finest Wednesday solo today, and also have an explanation of why we haven't had episodes the past couple weeks. We had like World's Finest Wednesday last week too, that we were able to do with the Ghost of Batman and Batman centric adventure today. And after I tell you about, well, the previous two episodes, we've just had technical issues with that. It's just not been our day, which is kind of leading to a theme that I had for this week's. And funny enough, it messed up too. But last week, or 2 weeks ago, I had promo comics that I did for Mike. It was a Kool-Aid and Marvel comic that they made. And then also the Justice League visited the inside the NBA team. We'll probably cover those again and re-record that at some point in time, but we had no sound whatsoever. We had video and no sound. Then, so as I was sitting there thinking, I was like, man, it was just a bad day kind of in that. And it got me like, oh, we've never done the Killing Joke before. And, the whole premise of one bad day there. And I thought that'd be something that Mike liked. So for Monday, we did. We recorded on Monday, One Bad Day. We were just super busy during the week and dealing with a lot of stuff. So it was going to come out late on Tuesday. Came in Tuesday morning to start recording that, and more problems with the audio. It recorded us, but you can't hear Mike really. He sounds very far off mic, and mine just sounds garbled and stuff like that. Again, have video, but so hopefully this works out while we're going at it, just the way it goes. But I think I figured things out. I will either re-record the Killing Joke by myself and have that up this week, because it leads and ties into what I have planned for us for next Monday. Or if Mike's back and filling up to it, we'll go ahead and redo the Killing Joke there too. But you can look forward to having that out hopefully by the end of this week. And then on Monday, us getting back on track of having our regular Monday episodes, and then our World's Finest Wednesday episodes on Wednesdays, which usually consists of silly World's Finest. Today's is actually a Detective Comics issue. It is, you'll see why I picked what I picked too once we get into it, because it's Detective Comics number 168, and that would involve the Red Hood. And it is, as it says on the cover, we dare you to accept this challenge. Can you outguess Batman and Robin and name the man behind the Red Hood? And this came out in February of 1951. Detective Comics, again, issue number 168. The cover artists there were Schwartz and George Roussos. And then for the story we're covering, which is Batman, the Man Behind the Red Hood, it's a Bill Finger story. So that's always cool to see. Same cover artist in Schwartz, who also worked on this, but as well as Mortimer. George Roussos was the inker, and the editor for this one was Jack Schiff. But as you might know, or maybe you don't, if you're not into it, we'll explain it too. There's direct correlation between the Killing Joke and this issue. And that's why I picked it for this World's Finest Wednesday. I really like to do that. I like to tie things in, and I like to make Mike go, ooh, like, and him figure things out. He's not here to go, ooh, so we'll just do it together. But still, with it being in 51, there's still some funny things, even just the story there to deal with. But this is the first appearance then of the Red Hood that also shows up, and the same costume shows up in the Killing Joke. Before we get into the story, what I was going to say is about the thing we had. So based off the whole One Bad Day thing, then it made me realize of all the one shots that came out last year, and maybe some into this year too. I'm pretty sorry over the, I'm sure, yeah, some did come out this year too. Anyway, the One Bad Day, the 64-page one shots that they did for 8 of the villains. I have, in the process over the past week, read 7 out of the 8. The only one I haven't read is the Raj Al Ghul one. And I'm hoping to be able to read that before next Monday then to have completed that. But one of my favorites out of the 8, and I thought just was a really good story and somebody who doesn't always get a lot of like good stories just by himself, was Clayface. And the One Bad Day Clayface I thought was really good. Also, I thought it was a great story to kind of like send us into the Halloween season coming up here on the show. I know we ran a poll and Alan Moore's Swamp Thing won out hands down on that. So I have volume 1. I'm going to read through, I think it's either 6 or 7 issues. It's essentially when Alan Moore starts taking over Swamp Thing. So the beginning of that run there. And we'll cover that in October. Also, it got second on the poll, and it's something that I've read a little bit, but want to dive into more. And everybody that seems to read it seems to like it. And that's Something Killing the Children. So we'll cover those both coming up next month. I'm probably going to throw in some old EC comics for Mike. I can kind of, since he's not here, I can kind of tell you what my plan is. I know he loves the old, like Tales from the Crypt and just the old EC horror comic stuff. So I'll probably put together an episode of where we piece all those together and then find something else to close it out. But just like, again, I love theming themes. So more horror comics kind of coming up for October. I had the whole One Bad Day thing to work these 2 weeks with Killing Joke and then leading into the Clayface one. But also, we'll try to dive a little more into the backstory of Clayface a bit and the history a bit of Basil Carlo. Because the first time he shows up is actually in I believe it's a Detective Comics as well, but he just dresses up as an old villain because he's just an actor, and he dresses up as a villain that he played, or a monster that he played in one of the movies that he acted in that was named Clayface. So it's a lot different than I'm more familiar with, or my introduction is the Batman the Animated Series Clayface. So it's, the product, and that kind of transformed him. And I think that that's kind of part of what the comics are based on it are more now too. But so we'll dive into Clayface and just the great story I really enjoyed. One Bad Day. I mean, a lot of great. I enjoyed all of them. I know that people, I feel like as comic book fans, sometimes we're really harsh on stuff. And I know that people kind of had their own rankings for them, but I thoroughly enjoyed in its own way each and every one shot that I've read so far. So our one shot of the One Bad Days, I enjoyed like all of them, and the creative teams for them seemed to pair really well and work really well together. So I'd recommend reading some of those if you've seen it and thought about it. I know they might not be for everybody, but I really enjoyed, like, each one was really cool with the character, and I'm gonna go into some of that more with the Clayface or with the Clayface episode next week then too. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get back into our World's Finest Wednesday for today, which is Detective Comics number 168, The Man Behind the Red Hood. And it's a Batman and Robin adventure, and probably be a little bit quicker of an episode where it's just me and without Mike and I being able to go back and forth. But there are some things still to have fun with this issue. Bob Kane down there in the signature. But what we get here is Batman is asked, I do love this to start it out here. It's basically Batman sees that the bat signal has gone off, and he swings by. It's supposed to be night too, and it looks like it's day, but he swings by to see Commissioner Gordon, and Commissioner Gordon is there with I'm trying to remember his name. It says it there, but he's like he's the headquarters. Dang it, I'm sorry. Anyway, he's the dean of the college. He's a teacher. Anyway, he wants Batman to come. I guess that's not really important. He wants Batman to come and teach a class on criminology. Basically, Batman and Robin are going to come and teach. So Batman accepts, and Batman just shows up in costume as like big man on campus there. And he walks by, and there's guys like, oh, wow. He's so barrel chested, he'd make a great fullback. And the girls are like, oh, I wish I really would have taken Batman's class. So Batman is a big deal on campus there, which I just think is really funny. But then while Batman is sitting there and he's talking to his class, and he wants to kind of understand, like, hey, I guess he decides the best way for me to learn or to get to know my class is for me to ask you all, like, why you want to be in these classes or why you wanted to take this. And so he asks a guy named Paul, and Paul tells him, well, like, my family's from Hawaii and I want to be a medical examiner for the Hawaii Police Department. Then he asks a kid named Jimmy, and I'm telling you about these two kids because these are going to be his two like A-list pupil students through the story. And Jimmy Kell tells him that, like, my father was Chips Kell, like a gangster, and I have to make up for the fact, or make up to society for him. Like, he ended up killing an FBI agent, so I have to pay for his debt. Like, and I want to be like a lawman and be able to catch all the crooks because his dad was a bad guy. So Batman's like, all right, cool. Glad to know that. Let's go ahead and talk about how important of an aspect observation and deduction are. So, Jimmy, come up here, look at this footprint. What might one think if you see a footprint like that? And Jimmy goes up and he tells him, well, what I've noticed is that the heel sinks in deeper than the front of the shoe. So therefore the crook walked backwards. And that is why, that he did it to throw off the crooks. And Batman's like, you're right. Then he shows another picture to Paul and he's like, Paul, like, can you deduce if this guy was murdered or if he unalived himself? And so Paul says, well, by my observation, like, he's a guy who holds his gun and like he's left-handed because his gun holster's over here, but the person put the gun in his right hand. So obviously he was murdered. Batman's like, you missed something too. There's a crimped cigarette when all the other ones are clean ends. Our killer used a cigarette holder. So Batman's scolding, he's like, hey, not scolding, but he's like, hey, you got to pay more attention. Then he also tells him, also, whenever you lift up a gun, make sure to stick a pencil in the muzzle and just lift it up that way. So after class, then Batman's like, all right, we're going to run you guys through a test. And that test is going to be a case that we were never able to solve, like Robin and I, or I guess maybe just Batman by himself. But it's 10 years ago. And it involves the Red Hood. And what Batman keeps hearing while he visits these people is that, there's a guy that shows up and he has just like no face. It's just this clear, just like slick red hood or like, mask over it. Like nobody can see his face. It's just like shiny metal. And so nobody can really identify him in any way. And Batman thinks this whole thing is a joke in a sense. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Excuse me. Not a joke, but Batman is trying to confirm it himself. And so he's finally able to do that when he comes across the Red Hood in it's an ice factory. Excuse me. In like an ice factory. And so that's where he meets him finally. And he notices that, oh yeah, he has the, no face, like what he's thought. And the two of them kind of sit there and talk. And Batman's like, all right, Red Hood, like the stories about you are true, and you are blank face. And he's like, yeah, Batman, I can just see the same, who knows, like he's trying to tell him like, maybe I have x-ray vision or hear all these powers. What he ends up doing though is to try to get away is he takes his gun and doesn't shoot it at Batman, but he shoots it at one of the pipes and some gas starts leaking out. It's ammonia gas. And Batman, trying to be able to live, ends up going over to the window, opening it up to let fresh air in. And by the time he turns around, he no longer sees the Red Hood. Then he talks about how for like another month, then he had to deal with the Red Hood. And then eventually, as they're chasing him out, and I want to see if it shows it. I can't remember if I zoom in on it. You can't see the building. But anyway, to get away from the crooks, he dives into this chemical mixture through the catch basin of the plant that's there to escape. And he just kind of swims away. And Batman makes mention that they don't know if he's lived and survived or if the chemicals ended up killing him. But the Red Hood hasn't been seen for 10 years since then. So that's the test case, is for us to try to figure out if the Red Hood is still alive or if he is, no longer with us. So it gets around the school that Batman and the class are reopening the case. And Paul and Jimmy, the A students that Batman's teaching, are deciding that they're going to try to figure out like different parts of this Jimmy's like, oh, he stole exactly $1 million. Like, he has to still be alive and around, while Paul is working on figuring out how the mask worked. Well, that night, or at that moment, I think it says later the night, the two of them are working on that, but later that moment, the Red Hood shows up at the college cashier's office, and he wants to go ahead and rob, the college payroll is what he wants to take. And he knocks over the security guard, and as he goes to leave, Robin tries to stop him, and Robin goes to punch the mask, and Robin's like, ow, my fist, like it hurts. And the Red Hood's just he's like, yeah, that's, it's nothing to the Red Hood. He shakes it off, and he runs off towards one of the science buildings, and Batman tells Robin to stay behind, and Batman chases after him, and he can't figure out how he escaped. I do love, and I know that it just happens sometimes in comics, and I always do it, where they like direct you, but it's like in an odd path. That's a weird thing that my mind and eyes always seem to enjoy, just like, I don't know. But we go back to, all we see is that he dropped a hat, like a hat that he would wear without the hood on to kind of like blend in. And so Batman takes his hat, and they go back to Wayne Manor. And while they're there, he's trying to figure out, like, look at it to see what color it is. And he asks Robin to shine the light closer on it. And Robin, dealing with a broke hand now from punching the Red Hood's mask and doing nothing to it, accidentally tries to move it with that, and he knocks the lamp over, and it falls, and it burns the hair that Batman's trying to look at, just charred black. But Batman, not wanting to scold Robin, says, hey, weren't you working on a solution to like figure out like how it would, you could find, what was it? Oh, talking about a new chemical formula you'd been developing. And Robin's like, yeah, it's going to restore the original color of burned fibers. So I guess it works on hair too. So he goes and he uses on it, and he's like, I think actually that the formula is not ready, because all it did was turn this one green. And Batman's like, well, don't feel too bad, Dick. We may get another break soon. They're like, all right, well, that didn't work. As they head back to campus, though, he notices, oh, hey, the Red Hood's in our class, and he dives in to stop the Red Hood, but no, it's just Paul. Paul's figured out the Red Hood's mask, and what it is he tells him that he's essentially used two-way mirrors, and they're just red mirrors. So it's all like red metal, but I guess like glass for the eyes. So, it's reflective, but he can see on the other side. And a lot of this stuff, and you can see kind of the circles there, a lot of this stuff is, if you've read Killing Joke already, you get kind of the references to stuff that's shown up in there now. If not, then just wait, because I might be, depending on how Mike's doing that solo, or we'll go ahead and re-record it and release that too. But he tells him that that's how he was able to see, and also that it doubles as like why he wasn't phased by the ammonia in the ice plant back then, is because the hood also, I guess, fits snugly enough to where it's like a diving mask and also like a gas mask, which doesn't necessarily explain some of it at the end. But so he's like, all right, well, we figured that out. And he's like, now what we need to do is we'll just track down like the Red Hood. Like, why would he show up after 10 years is what they're trying to figure out. Later, he's spotted again on campus at the Mayan. I guess they're having like it's a Mayan exhibit that the school's showing. I don't remember like what room they're showing in it. What I love here too is Batman decides to take a shortcut across the football field. So the football field is just going to come down the next morning to see tire marks all over the field. Hopefully they don't have a game on Saturday. What happens is the Red Hood throws the Mayan exhibit thing down on, or a statue down on the Batmobile. Batman's able to get out. And as they run in to a room, he's about to go into a room that's where they prep the new exhibit arts that come in, and they talk about how there's chemicals and gases in there, but he like avoids it. And they're like, well, why? Like, that shouldn't bother him at all. And instead he jumps out of a window. And so they chase after him out of the window to catch him outside. And when Batman does, he notices like, hey, I know that face, like your name is Earl Farmer Boy Benson, which is a weird nickname, but it's Farmer Boy. And he's like, you're 22. It's weird that Batman just memorizes like all the criminals in Gotham with his photographic memory like that. It's just always funny to me. Like, I know exactly where you are. 8 arrests, like his whole, catalog of offenses memorized. And he's like, you were just released from prison 6 months ago. And he's like, yeah, and I'm going straight now, like I promise. But if you'll notice, back in when Batman's telling them all about this, there is Earl Farmer Boy Benson doing yard work, or I thought it was, at least, maybe I'm wrong, outside the window down there in the bottom right frame. So I think he overheard them, and you'll understand why some of this. But anyway, he's like, all right, well then maybe he would have had to hide his Red Hood outfit, Batman. Like, oh, that's what it is. Well, I just spoiled something for you, but folks, don't worry, it's gonna be him. What happens is they don't see, like, when they tackle him, he's not wearing any of the Red Hood outfit. And so that's where he's like, I've gone straight. And then I remember this now because the boys are really mean. Paul and Jimmy, his students, are like, yeah, plus he's like dumb and illiterate, so he couldn't be a genius criminal. That's essentially what they tell Batman. And Batman's like, yeah, no, I think you're right. All right. And then he goes to the dean, or Dean Chalmers. Not superintendent, but dean. All right, that's a Simpsons reference. Anyway, and he tells him, like, hey, I need you to print something. I think that's going to bring the Red Hood out again. And Chalmers is like, you don't think he's that stupid? And Batman's like, no, I think he is. And so they print, like, hey, there's a valuable, like, exhibition in the gymnasium. Gold football trophy is going to be on loan from Bayview Tech. And so Red Hood, sure enough, shows up, and what's happened is Batman had a plan for him. And what they do is they shine all these red lights at him. And so while he's dealing with the red lights, he's like, I can't see, I'm blind. He just keeps yelling out. And Batman eventually, like, stops him, like, knocks the gun out of his hands, and then pops the hood off of him. And he's like, you're not blind. It's just the red lenses from your light. Like, you should know this, but of course you don't know this, because they unmask him, and it is Farmer Boy Benson indeed. They find out what happens is Farmer Boy Benson tells Batman, all right, you're right. I'm not the real Red Hood, because that was 10 years ago. I'm 22. He would have been 12. I caught the real Red Hood the other night, and I have him locked in the tool shed. Yes, the real Red Hood he has locked in the tool shed. And they're like, he showed up that night to rob the chancellors, to get the payroll, the college payroll, because he had heard that they were reopening the case, and he didn't want to be made a fool of. So that's why he showed up the first time. And as he was escaping, Farmer Boy Benson essentially, like, caught him and just tied him up and put him in the shed. And we get a reveal here, and I'll go ahead and make it full screen to do this. And so they walk in, and he's like, it's been a long time, 10 years. Okay, Jimmy, let's have a look at who was under the Red Hood. And sure enough, it was the Joker. And what he tells him is like, yes, Batman, that's the one secret I've kept from you for all these years. It's true. I was the Red Hood even back then. And I was planning to retire. But what happened is, basically, when I dove in those chemicals to swim away, through that chemical waste, when I got home, I realized the vapor, it turned my hair green, like my lips rouge red, and I look like an evil clown. Then he says, oh, what a joke on me. So he being the Joker, says then that I realized that my new face could terrify people. And I named myself, the playing card company. So there you go. That's what he was stealing from. Really, like, Alan Moore is a guy, and I love the way when he wrote this stuff would go back a lot of ways that some of the greats do, and went back and used the stuff that came before it. Because again, a lot of ties to the Killing Joke, which I'll have to tell Mike about them all now, since it wasn't on this when we go ahead and record it, that he sprinkles in from the old history stuff here. Grant Morrison does that a lot too. A lot of writers do that, and I really love it when they do, to find that still somehow, like, an old random issue from 1951 is still canon in 1988. It's just kind of cool to link it all together in a way. And so he says, so I named myself the Joker after the clown on the card. And he goes, in all these years, this is, I found very funny to close it out. And he's like, in all these years, I've been laughing at you for never being able to figure out that I was the Red Hood. And Batman goes, you're wrong. I knew that Robin's chemical didn't fail and the green hair was right. And it was you as the Red Hood. And Robin's like, yeah, that's right, Joker. Now it's our turn to laugh. Ha 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 at you. Cause he's like, so it seems that, goes Batman's like, I can vouch for that. So you see the joke's on you all along. To me, I still think that the Joker obviously got the last laugh there because he held on to it for 10 years and you knew like about it for 2 days, Batman. So it's really very much like Robin's like, yeah, no, like we knew. Or Batman is like, we knew, like I figured out 2 days before. And I still think that the Joker had the last laugh there. Anyway, that is the story of the Red Hood. And it ties in very well to the Killing Joke, which we did on Monday, but we weren't able to release because the audio was bad. So hopefully we can get that re-recorded, or I can go ahead and cover it this week then too to get that out, and we can get into Clayface One Bad Day next week and just Clayface as a character, and then we'll have another World's Finest Wednesday next Wednesday too. But looking forward to this a lot. I just really love talking about this stuff, even if Mike's not around, but I like being able to introduce Mike to some of this stuff as well. I know that he has, enough knowledge to be dangerous. And so sometimes I'm able to like introduce him to things for the first time. And I really like that, which is what I really enjoyed about the Killing Joke episode is I know it has its problems in the way that Barbara Gordon's treated. And we cover that a bit. And Alan Moore, I think himself has said that, he's not necessarily the biggest fan of it about maybe making the Joker a bit too much of a serious character than he needed to. And that the grittiness and the grimness was the only thing like picked up from that in The Watchmen compared to other stuff. But it's still a solid story. And there's a lot of like Heath Ledger's Joker in there. I think Christopher Nolan said that he pulled from the Killing Joke a lot too. I know Tim Burton said he did for Jack Nicholson and his Joker, or for Batman. But it's a really good story. So we'll have that recorded again. And then also coming up in October, we're going to get into some horror comics. So some cool things to look forward to there. If you want to go ahead and email us about something you'd like to see us cover, or, something you wanted to add that maybe I missed, or even just history in general, and just want to start up a conversation, feel free to email us. It is... I'm blanking on our email. So that's fantastic. Oh, it's brosfoesandheroes@gmail.com. You see how bros, foes, and heroes is spelled down there, except spell out and, not the ampersand. So brosfoesandheroes@gmail.com. Love to hear from you guys, or just leave comments below too. Make sure to go ahead and give it a like. Subscribe if you haven't. We appreciate taking the time out, any time out you do, to go ahead and watch this and just partake in, enjoying this stuff with us and being able to learn stuff. I love going back and watching, like I will watch a lot of other comic YouTube channels and just kind of sit there and soak it in because I just, love the whole comic stuff in general. I'm rambling now, so that means I probably should wrap it up. Thank you guys, as always, for taking the time out to listen. As always, make sure to check out the other great podcast on the Rogue Media Network family of stations, roguemedianetwork.com, as I'm doing Mike's part for him too. So until next time, stay safe, everybody.
Bros and heroes. Gonna tell you about bros and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.